Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ski Rex Media Podcast. Yet again, another brand new episode with another brand new interview with someone who knows more about this sport and this business more than I do, which is what we like here because it's a learning experience. I tell people, I was actually telling people in New Hampshire at McIntyre, I've been skiing since I was 12. I'm 43 now. I worked at Mount Snow for 5 seasons. I know nothing about this industry, and that's fine. But first, before we get to our guest and talk about a whole bunch of things here, let's talk about Whaleback Mountain. I love Whaleback Mountain. Our guest has talked about Whaleback Mountain as well with Executive Director John Hunt, whom I enjoy, and we're going to get into that too. Whaleback Mountain is up here not far from me in Enfield, New Hampshire, right off the interstate I-89, exit 16. There is no more accessible mountain that I have ever found. It's got its own exit. How cool is that? And they've got everything. Small package, but everything you want. Steeps, trees, groomed, not groomed, good for the kids, good for you. They'll teach you how to do it. It's a wonderful place with a double chair because you can't beat an old double chair. That's just cool. And a T-bar, which is where I finally got the hang of the T-bar. Whaleback Mountain, ski it to believe it. Seriously, check it out. It doesn't cost much. Their biggest ticket this year, $50. That's it for the day. Nothing else. Then we also talk about my second sponsor, my second partner. I will be riding a pair of Saint skis, Saint custom skis and snowboards out of Gorham, New Hampshire. You want something custom? How custom you want it? You just want it to look cool? You want it to be a certain size? You want it to be a certain width? Whatever you want, they'll make it for you. SaintSkis.com. Check out their gallery. You'll see all kinds of cool stuff. Some of them beautiful. Mine are going to be amazing. Kind of still a secret, but not really. I've been kind of letting people in on it, but they still look great. I've showed the designs, just not the size, and the size won't surprise anybody who knows me, but whatever. Saint Skis, Saint Custom Skis and Snowboards, SaintSkis.com in Gorham, New Hampshire. Shout out to KJ and his dad, Kevin, who run that place. Gonna meet them. I mean, KJ's already been on the program, but gonna meet up with them probably when it's time to pick up the skis. It's gonna be awesome. But anyway, now that I've rambled on and kept this man waiting here, Stuart Winchester, you know him, you love him. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing? Awesome list of sponsors there, Tim.
It wasn't bad, and I'm getting better at the reads. I don't tongue-tie myself as much as I used to.
You crushed it.
Yeah, well, it's okay. It's okay. A little, try to, because I do it with people waiting. Now, Stuart's smart. I was re-listening to the John Hunt episode of the Storm Skiing Journal and podcast today, and you had the read, and then clearly you recorded the interview after the read, and I was like, dang, that's really smart. And I've done that before, but then if I do it this way, it just saves me time later, so I'm lazy, and that's really what it comes down to. And that's the beauty part of having Stuart Winchester, Storm Skiing Journal and podcast. That is correct. I am saying that right.
That's right.
Okay, good.
You got it.
Cool. Awesome. Now, again, we've talked about this with Mario and Brian. We've talked about this with both Out of Bounds Adams. We're not really in competition. We're just different. And being able to listen to an interview with John Hunt, for example, I've talked to him. Now Stuart's talked to him. It's a whole different experience than when actually conducting it. How's it feel to be on this side of the microphone for a change?
I love it. Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity, Tim.
Hey, man, any old time, man. So now I know anybody who's tuning into my program to listen to you already knows who you are. He's got a bigger following than I do. He's probably more professional than I am. I don't know about if the self-deprecating humor is working here when I say it's whatever. The man is good, and we all enjoy it, all kidding aside. Dude, why don't you just give us a rundown of why you got into it, what it is, where it is, why you do it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So the Storm Skiing Journal and podcast launched in October 2019. I live in New York City, so anytime I'm going skiing, I have to drive far to do it. And I was looking for ski podcasts to listen to on those long drives that specifically talked about ski areas and what I've come to call lift-served skiing. Sure. And what I found was most of them focused more on the free skiing side of skiing. And that's the folks doing tricks and backcountry stuff and, really great skiers doing really great, exciting things. But sometimes I just want to hear people talk about Sugarbush or Sunday River or Waterville Valley. So I got this idea for a podcast. My wife is a television editor for a living. Nice. So I had a built-in editor because I could never figure out the tech side of it. And then I also noticed that the ski media, like the written media, had gotten away from writing about ski resorts as well. And there were still some outlets doing it.
Sure.
But back in the 90s, when I was coming up, really getting into skiing, there was a lot of information about, the ski magazine or skiing magazine or Powder would write a big feature story on Vail or Alta or Jackson Hole or Killington. And I really wasn't seeing a lot of that anymore. It was all about kind of the adventure and the backcountry and the really novel things. Again, cool, but not super relatable. So I thought, okay, what had kind of filled the vacuum was social media and basically anyone having a microphone, or a megaphone rather, to just say whatever they wanted. And I thought that was an opportunity to do some actual journalism and really talk to the folks running ski areas and finding out from them what was going on, and then breaking down in a really analytical way, like what was happening, right? So the Icon Pass comes out, all these mountains join it, Jackson Hole, Revelstoke join the Icon Pass. That's great. That's a press release, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Contextualize a little bit. What does it mean for the skiers? What does it mean for the pass? What does it mean for the ski industry? So that's what I tried to do, and it's gone better than I could have anticipated. And as of this recording, we went live about 3 years ago, and I have really good momentum and don't see any signs of it slowing down anytime soon.
Excellent. And that's what I like to hear, because I agree with you. There's not much that's relatable to the street level skier, as I like to say. And I've been pushing this since I started. Skiing, snowboarding, snowboards as a whole are for everyone and anyone. So as I'm doing this, I want to talk to everyone and everyone, whether you're running a mountain, whether you're an athlete, pro, amateur, big mountain, FIS, doesn't matter. The artists, the writers, Mike Rogie, Mike Mountain Gazette, he came on. I want to talk to everybody because I want it to be relatable to everybody. So that's something I do like about your program, is that you do it from a street level. And I again, I don't know if that's a stupid way to put it, but a street level skier, someone who's just there, we're not all taking jumps and stuff. I actually say the same thing about ski film. Everybody's like, new Warren Miller film is great. And I was like, yeah, is it jump, frat boy, jump, frat boy, jump, frat boy? So I agree with you.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I most ski media is told through the prism of the local, or the townie, the people who are there, who ski 100 days a year at Jackson or Snowbird or Palisades Tahoe. And I respect that, and that's a certain lifestyle. But I'm pretty upfront with framing myself as a tourist. I live in New York City. I have to drive a minimum of an hour and 15 minutes to ski at the closest outdoor lift service ski area, which is Mountain Creek.
Yep.
And I am fine with that. Most skiers are tourists, right?
Sure.
And so when the ski media is owned by people who live in ski towns and they're setting the narrative for 99% of the ski experience, there's going to be a disconnect between most people who are actually skiing. Mm-hmm. So my point of view is coming in as the person who's coming from outside, asking these naive and sort of outsider questions, but sometimes that remove helps because you're not so close to it.
Sure.
And sometimes the closer you are to it, the more kind of passionate and emotional you can be about certain topics. You see, for example, this housing situation I've been writing about in the town of Vail, sure. Which sometimes is harder to write about from an objective point of view if you're there all the time and know people who have certain opinions one over the other. Same with the gondola situation in Little Cottonwood Canyon. I'm just looking at this as an outsider and saying, forming an opinion, doing some analysis based on what I think makes sense. And that, I think, is the value of, it is weird. I admit it. It's weird that I have this national ski publication that's run out of Brooklyn, New York. But I think there's some value in that. And I think that gives me a certain level of objectivity and a certain sort of universal perspective that's harder to get if you're, say, living in Crested Butte and skiing 100 days a year at that mountain and only that mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. Having the city especially here in the East, a lot of the folks who come up here, the majority of them, because the biggest thing we have in the East is New York City. So the majority of everybody is in New York City. That's just the way it is, and that's fine. It is an interest to see someone who actually knows what they're talking about, as in not just some, I know I joke about the word poser, but for lack of a better term, someone who doesn't know what they're talking about and someone who really doesn't care. They're just throwing out there whatever for whatever reason, and that's fine. But having someone who can actually take a look at it, analyze it, come up with an opinion, an educated opinion, mind you, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And it's beautiful because you can say as a tourist, like, hey, Mountain Creek's the closest thing I have, from my point of view, it's within an hour I can abuse any of the three major mega passes, Epic, Icon, or Indy. I can abuse them. I will ski this year for $10 a day. That's just the way it is, plus Whaleback, plus Ski Queechee, plus what have you, Saskadina, whatever it is. It's right around the corner for me. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing. And that's actually why I like what you're doing, is because I don't get to see it from you. Like, I talked to Matt Viola from Hill Street Snowboarding. He's from Brooklyn, as well. And he says, it was different being a city kid who was just going to the Poconos as a kid, and then his parents dropping him off there, and then him growing up and being able to come up here. Mm-hmm. It's a whole other world, man. And I can't imagine what it is. Like, it draws you to the mountain. What exactly draws you to the mountains? Like, you write about them, you talk to them, you're in the city, and I love New York, but what draws you out to it, to even just Mountain Creek?
I've had this column kicking around in my head for a few years now, and I've never actually taken the time to write it. But what I like about ski areas is the same thing that I like about New York City. I grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up in a small town, about 800 people.
Sure.
And I would always kind of wonder where everyone was, right? There were no kind of gathering spots, right? Maybe in the summer there was the beach and the lake that was there. But when I found skiing, I found a place that drew people in that wasn't a shopping mall, because that's kind of what people do in the Midwest. They go shopping, and that's like their gathering space.
Sure.
And I really like the energy of a lot of people in one place, united around a common thing. And the reason I moved to New York City is that I'm very drawn to that energy of a lot of people together. And watching a lot of things happen at the same time. And you could just go out in New York and you're never alone. You kind of feel like you're part of something. Mm-hmm. When you arrive at a ski area, you feel like you're part of something. Again, I don't backcountry ski. For me, it's too much trouble. It's too much gear. It's too much risk. I'm not prepared for it. I'm not equipped for it. If someone wants to take me, sure, I'll go. But, I am drawn to nodes of human activity, and that's what a ski resort is. And I like the extreme variety of it.
Sure.
And the personality and the culture that surrounds each one. Each ski resort is like its own little city, right? If you go to Boston, it's different than San Francisco, it's different than New York, it's different from Chicago. Those are all very distinct places. Totally. Even though on the outside, they're all a big city with skyscrapers in the middle and a train system and a bunch of people. But you're there and you feel different. Mm-hmm. Every ski area is the same. And there's 473 ski areas in the United States. And they're all interesting to me. I have all the big passes, and I go to all the little areas too. There's no ski area that I'm not interested in, and there's none that I've ever been to and not wanted to go back to for some reason or another and not found a story in. So I really I love the whole breadth and variety of lift-served skiing.
I like that. I really do, because I could totally relate to that. I love going anywhere. I'll check it out. I don't care if it's just surface lifts, Northeast Slopes. What do they got? A T-bar and the world's fastest rope tow, which I think is amazing. I love how they put that out on their website. Bring a pair of work gloves. because it's going to rip your gloves apart. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. But, you know, the biggest place I've been is Killington personally, because I've only skied in New England and never in Maine. Isn't that weird? For being a New Englander pretty much my entire life. I've been to Maine, but never skied it. But you're right. I want to see all of them. And I have to explain this. And I wonder if you do too, to people who aren't in on it, who don't do it. You know, they say, well, it's just slapping your sticks on your feet and going down snow. It can't be different from one place to the next. And that's not true, is it?
You know, I had this friend who used to argue with me because when Coke switched from glass bottles to plastic,
yep,
he was like, dude, it's the same drink. The Coke in the plastic is the same as a glass bottle. I'm like, no, dude, it's different. You know, have one in a glass bottle and you understand, but in order to get one, you had to like drive to Mexico. It was insane. So I think it's a little easier to get them now because they've sort of realized that appeal. But this is something that formulaically he was probably right? But yeah, the way that the drink interacted with the material, it somehow made it hit your mouth, your palate different. So that's something that's chemically identical, right? Is so different just based on that one factor. So if you take skiing and you look at all the different variables that make a ski area, from vertical drop to the lift system to the demographic it serves, like some places are heavy on kids, some are heavy on families. If you go to a place like Berkshire East, you're going to see a lot of really good skiers, right? Or like Snowbird, you're going to see a lot of really awesome skiers. To things like exposure, to the weather, to the steepness of the hills. All those things combine to create a very unique character in each ski area. And every one is completely different. And parts of every ski area are completely different. Like Mountain Creek's my home mountain. And it used to be two separate ski areas. There's North, which used to be called Great Gorge. And then there's, South used to be Great Gorge. And North used to be Vernon Valley.
Okay.
And they combined them a long time ago with one big long lift called Southern Journ. The South has been transformed into a giant terrain park, and the North has this really weird lift called the Cabriolet. It's like a giant bucket.
Yep.
And they feel they're connected by a lift.
Sure. They
feel like completely different ski areas because the South is teenage snowboarders, and that's like 80% of it, right? Teenage snowboarders. Not judging them one way or the other. It's just two skiers there.
Yeah.
Other side is families and, you know, adult beginners and little kids and school groups and basically everyone else. They may as well be completely different worlds. I spend most of my time on South. I just enjoy the vibe over there.
Sure.
But even those two parts of the exact same ski area are so different.
That's actually very interesting. Interesting to me for a couple reasons. One, I lived in New Jersey for 15 years, never skied at Mountain Creek. Isn't that stupid? It's amazing where I've lived versus where I've skied, and it just makes no sense. People are like,
down, man. I'll take you over there.
All right, I'll go. I love New Jersey. A lot of people are like, ew, you love New Jersey? I was like, I love New Jersey, man. I mean, I know the parts to stay away from, but I love New Jersey. It's great. But then people say the same thing, like, wait, you lived in Las Vegas for a year and a half and you didn't even go out to Lee Canyon. I was like, listen, it was a different time in my life, okay? It was a thing. It was a personal thing. But
we've all been there, man.
Oh, yeah, totally. But you're right. And it's really interesting to me that you pick Mountain Creek, because you're right. I would assume anyway. You said it. I don't have to assume that it's one ski hill now, but you get the two different vibes. And I've used examples of, like, back in the day before the Hermitage Club was the Hermitage Club, when it was Haystack and Mount Snow, owned by the same company. You could see one from the other, two totally different places. And we were at Haystack a ton when I was a teenager because it was just less people. Same thing goes with Stratton Bromley Magic. You can see the other two from any one, but totally different experience to each one, and you get a totally different crowd because of it. I mean, look at Magic, man. That's a crowd all of its own, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Jeff Hathaway is a fantastic storyteller. He's really finally found what works for Magic. You know, that's a ski area that failed and was out of business for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And it was not inevitable that Magic succeed, especially being right next to Stratton and Bromley, which are two ski areas that have a lot more support and a lot more modern lift and snowmaking systems. Jeff Hathaway will have you believing that Magic is the best ski area in Vermont. And, some people will be throwing tomatoes at me when I break the news to them that it isn't. It's nice, but it's not as good as the story that Jeff tells about it, and that's why it's succeeding. I really am impressed with how upfront his Alpine updates are. Those email newsletters he sends out, those are, in my opinion, the best regular newsletter update from any general manager in skiing. I subscribe to hundreds of them because I consider that part of the storm is to break those down, and most of them go right into the garbage, but once in a while you find a nugget in there.
Sure.
And he's very transparent. He's very consistent. He's very honest. He owns his mistakes. And because of him, Magic season pass holder base has quadrupled, maybe even more now that they've gotten through this season, most of the way through the season pass sales season. So I think they're doing a terrific job at Magic. I do think it's a great ski area. Is it the best ski area in Vermont? I mean, look, you're talking about a state that has Smuggler's Notch and Jay Peak and Stowe and Sugarbush and Killington. I mean, it's tough competition. Magic's great.
Yeah.
But, Jeff Hathaway has made it seem amazing. And that's, all credit to him.
Oh, yeah. Jeff he will sell you on Magic Mountain 100%. And I've said it openly. I was like, if I'm going to relate Magic to anything, I'd relate it to the dive bar. I really feel that's kind of a close, not say I'm hating on it. I went up there when it had no snow on a terrible day, and I still had a good time. So it is what it is, but it's great that you can get that dive, and then you can go to the high end thing over there at Stratton if you want to, and then you can come back around, hit Bromley, which is kind of middle of the road, plus it's south facing, it has all that sun. Oh, it's amazing, awesome, love it. Also very accessible, right on a main road. Right on a main road. Don't get hit by cars, kids. Holy smokes. It's beautiful. And again, I try to explain to people, like, I want to see as many different mountains as I can, not just for bragging rights, though I am coming for you, Tom Thrash. I know how many you have. He has over 60, almost all in the U.S. too. So it's like, wow, dude, I got some work to do. But they are all different, and that's part of the fun. And you get to talk to all the different people, and that's also part of the fun. Stuart, you're quite the driver out there. I was shocked when you said you came up to McIntyre from Jack Frost. I think you said down there in PA. I was like, that's a bit of a haul, isn't it?
That's right. Well, listen. I grew up in Michigan.
Sure.
And everyone in Michigan drives everywhere all the time. When I took my first ski trip out of Michigan, I went to Copper Mountain in Colorado, and there was never even a question that I would make the drive. It was, I think, a 20-hour drive. Me and my buddy did it. We were 18 years old. On the way out, we stopped halfway in Lincoln, Nebraska. On the way back, we just drove straight and took turns. We used to drive to California all the time when we were teenagers. We would take turns. We would drive it straight in 37 hours. For me, coming from the Midwest to wake up at 4 a.m, drive up to Vermont for a powder day, and drive home that night I don't even think twice about it. It just makes sense to me. It's how I've always been lived, it's how I've always been programmed. I do have 2 kids. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So I do like to be home as often as possible every night to spend time with them and be there when they wake up. So I make as much of a point to ski as much as possible while being away from home as little as possible. I also use a lot of vacation time, so I typically will go during the week.
Sure. Weekday is where it's at. I've kind of worked my schedule to do the same thing. Like, I'd rather work through the weekend, and always have. Again, it's when it's something you're accustomed to. I've always worked in retail or the ski industry. So I'm on the weekends and holidays. I don't care. What's Christmas?
Yeah.
Nothing for me. I don't care. But I do, again, one of the things I like about you is that you're a driver. I love a good road trip. I love a bad road trip. I don't care. I will drive around the world and have planned that. Ewan McGregor and his friend Charlie Borman did it. They went around the world once, the long way. Long way round is what the series was called. So if you've never seen that, it had nothing to do with skiing, but I love a good road trip. That's something interesting, man. Being a New York City guy and coming up here, what's that like? Like, I've never had to do it. I've never had to, come up Friday night in traffic now I've lived in New Jersey. Sure, I've been stuck on the Garden State Parkway, aptly named. park.
Mm-hmm.
What is that like being a travel skier of that type? Again, for me, I could drive everywhere and not see another car. You can't.
Yeah, well, typically when I leave, I almost always go in the morning. So I either drive up on a weekday morning, or if I do a weekend like to Mountain Creek. Usually if I go on the weekend, I'm going to Mountain Creek because it's quick. Season pass holders get on the lifts at 8, and they have high-speed lifts and 1,000 vertical feet, so I'll make laps. It's very rare that I'm leaving on a Friday night. So when I'm leaving, usually the wall of headlights is heading the other way down the highway.
Totally.
And then when I'm coming back, everyone's heading out of the city. So I'm kind of doing that reverse commute. I am going up to Sunday River for the Journ 8 lift opening in a couple weeks. So I will be driving up on Friday night with my family. Nice. It sucks. You know, the holiday traffic getting out of the city is terrible, but I have lived in the city for 20 years. I'm pretty calculating when it comes to picking my spots about when to leave. You know, my wife will tell you I have all these crazy plans and strategies and techniques and for beating traffic and knowing all these crazy little routes out of the city. But you know, there's no one true hack. But I know I have a pretty good backpack full of them, and I'll pull them out whenever I need to. So, you know, typically I don't get caught in the really bad traffic as much as I can help it.
Now, tell me if you agree with this one. Being a New Jersey guy and having to come home to go skiing and visit family, you can decide which one's more important out there in the world, because I'm the only one in my family that skis. I avoid the George Washington Bridge like the plague. It's all about either Cuomo Bridge, which is what the Tappan Zee is called now for those who don't know, and or using the thruway. That's the way I go up to Albany. What do you think?
It depends on where I'm going. You know, I actually like the Taconic because it's almost never busy.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and that avoids any bridge. So typically if I'm going to Vermont, I'll do that. You have to be careful because there's a lot of cops, but I usually just set my cruise control on 60 and just go. That was the only ticket I've gotten in the last 20 years was on the Taconic. So I learned my lesson, and they're always perched there. So yeah, that's typically my route. If I'm going in New York, though, I will go out the GW because again it's morning, but I come back over the Cuomo, Tappan Zee, just because it's cheaper, and B, I don't know if I've ever seen it backed up inbound,
not
like eastbound,
not since they put the cameras in.
Yeah.
And I know that's
no
only
toll booths anymore.
Yeah, and I know that's only going the one way. It's not going the other way. But for some reason, I remember that before the new bridge was built. Let me ask you something as a New Yorker. Are you on the side of rename it Tappan Zee, or are we good with the Cuomo thing? This is just for me. It's stupid and goofy, I know.
Look, I'm sure if I looked into it, I would understand the rationale behind it. To me, I just get annoyed because it's hard to change your vernacular. Like I grew up in this small town in Michigan, like I said, and this gas station in town was called Total. And then it changed to a Marathon, and now it's called something else. It probably hasn't been Total since like 1989, but I still call it Total because that's just what's in my head, right? And so once you get these things in your head, it's hard to just reprogram yourself. It's just not how humans work. So
you're right.
I'd say it's just a little tricky. I don't really want to get involved with assigning a value if it's right or wrong. I think it's annoying.
There you go. There's the right answer. It's just goofy because I saw there was and again, I know it has nothing to do with his program, my program, skiing, nothing, but it's stuck in my head since there was a petition that went out, rename it Tappan Zee, and all this before the son of Mario Cuomo got in trouble. This was nothing political. It was just New Yorkers doing their thing. It's funny to me. I don't know, but Stuart is a travel skier, and New Yorkers, he just told you there's ways out that aren't the usual ways. You just got to know how to work your way around it. And don't be afraid to get up before sunrise and do it. Believe me, it helps. Coming from Jersey, I know the same thing, having to come through near the city. And if you leave at 4:35 in the morning, that's all. It's not even a deal. So that's awesome. Travel skiing is a wonderful thing. I love it. I also saw that you went past Granite Gorge the other day. I want to get down there myself. I actually went past that night I left and was heading to Keene, going to someone else's house after we were all done at McIntyre. So I didn't get to see it. How much about that place, since you stopped in and took the picture and you seem to know, how much of that place did you know? Or how much about this? Do you know the story? Because I know tidbits.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's talk about it. So Granite Gorge is one of these ski areas that has a very uneven history.
Sure.
Where no one's ever really been able to figure it out. It's had some periods of stability, and it's had some periods of being a lost ski area, and it's always just sort of hung on. And the last gentleman who owned it, whose name I can't think off the top of my head.
I don't remember either.
He passed away suddenly right around the time COVID started. I don't think he got COVID. I think he was just in bad health.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, so that's why it shut down. And then his brother held on to it for a while, said it wouldn't reopen for skiing, and then he ended up selling it to a group of local keen investors.
Sure.
I don't know who they are, but the general manager they hired is named Keith Kreischer, and he worked at Wyndham for a long time. Okay. I actually interviewed him for an article that I haven't written yet, just talking about the various ski areas that are slated to come back online, and there's 4 in the country that I'm aware of for this coming ski season. There's Granite Gorge and Tenney in New Hampshire. There's Hickory next door in New York. Well, not next door to New Hampshire, but next door to New England. And then out in Colorado is a little place called Kuchara. So Granite Gorge, this guy Keith is really bringing it back together. And everyone I spoke to at the Ski New Hampshire event seemed really confident that Granite Gorge come back online. Tenney, they were a little less certain about. But Granite Gorge, they felt really good about. They felt like he was doing all the right things. It's a small ski area. It's only about 500 vertical feet. It's pretty steep on the face. It's like a lot like Whaleback. It just has that one double chair.
Yep.
An old double chair that they put up within the past 10 to 15 years. It has some surface lifts, and they do plan to open mostly as its business is going to be school programs. It's going to be one of those places that lives and dies by teaching local kids how to ski. And it's a real stepping stone ski area. You go Granite Gorge, you learn there. You go up to Pat's Peak, you get better there. And then you start going to Sunapee, or you start going to Ragged, or you start going to Loon. So it's sort of this step up. Everyone's been real supportive of it. I feel good about it. I feel like of all the lost ski areas, that of the 4 I just mentioned, that and Kuchara are the ones that I think are going to come back online.
Sure.
This winter, the other 2 I'm less certain about, but that's the story. I saw they had made when I stopped by the other day, I didn't go behind the gate. It was really just a stopover. I was driving between New Hampshire and Mount Snow to take a few turns, and I just took some pictures. They had blown some snow on the beginner hill, and I couldn't really tell much else of what was going on. But last I talked to Keith, which was probably about a month ago now, he was feeling really good about opening for this winter.
Interesting. See, the thing is, and I saw this just before you got on. I was just flipping through social media, checking things out, whatever, killing time really. And I saw it and I was thinking about it. I was like, because the previous owner, I talked to him not officially because I wasn't when I started in this. While I did have some journalism education back in high school.
Fred Baba, that's his name.
That's his name. Yep, that was his name. And
sorry, Fred.
It's amazing that you could recall that. I don't even remember my name half the time. Holy smokes. In fact, when I saw that you were on the guest list for the Ski New Hampshire event, I was like, am I even going to remember who he is? The name, sure, but the face, it's going to be awful. I don't remember anything anymore. But anyway, I was talking to him, and and interviewing was my Achilles heel. I just was no good at it. Now I'm still no good at it, but at least I can make it fun. And I was talking to him, and it was just, I asked him, I was like, I just saw in one of the local rags, whatever it was, the Brattleboro Reformer, what have you, that it was being foreclosed or so, I don't know. But I asked him, I was like, dude, is this story right? And he said no, that it wasn't going to be auctioned, because that was the story. It was going to be auctioned and whatnot. He's like, no, that's not going to happen, this, that, and the other. A couple days later, it was announced official that it was going to be auctioned. So I never knew what the guy was doing. I couldn't get it. But he always seemed really, and I don't mean to speak ill of the dead. Like I said, I didn't know he died, but he always seemed very negative when I talked to him. So I had no idea. I was like, best of luck. It's a ski area in Keene that I had never heard of, and I grew up in southern Vermont from age 10 to age 20. Like that's where I grew up, and I skied at Mount Snow, and I worked at Mount Snow and Haystack and Killington, all the American Skiing Company, to date myself further. that's where I was. So I never heard of it. So it's like, why are you being negative, dog? Like, I don't know. That's why I wanted to ask you when I saw it. I was like, what was the story with that? Because I have no idea.
In your defense, I have to say social media and just the internet in general has made it a lot easier to have a complete view of ski areas, because before a ski area's reputation was only as good as its marketing, right? So everyone knew about Killington and Stowe and Jay Peak and Stratton and Okemo because those ski areas were large and they had marketing budgets and your friends were likely to have gone there, right? Because Killington was doing 1 million skier visits a year and Okemo was doing several 100,000.
Yeah.
And these little places, you know, it was unlikely that if you were going to drive up from New York City, which is where a good proportion of New York's or of Vermont's ski business comes from, you probably weren't going to drive up there to go to Magic or a smaller place. But now it's a little bit easier to, A, for these places to develop a following, but B, just from a consumer point of view, to just pull up a map and see all the different ski areas, and there's lists and everything online that it used to be you'd have to go buy a book and see what was in there, the white book of ski areas or whatever. So a lot of these little places really, I think a lot of lost ski areas would have done better in our current age because they could have differentiated themselves in a way that didn't require so many marketing dollars.
I would agree with that. And so, I mean, you did have your gems of marketing, you know, the Mad River Glen bumper stickers, man. That's got to be one of the best marketing campaigns in history. What did that cost them? $20 back in the 80s or 70s, whenever that started? I forget when. But, you know, everybody saw that. Mad River Glen, ski it if you can. Everybody knew that place, and it's that big. You know, it's a speck compared to everything around it. But you're right. I'm still finding out about places I'd never heard of, never been. The beauty of the Indy Pass. I always talk up the Indy Pass. I love it. I never took the time to come up to what was then called Suicide 6, now Saskadena 6. Because, well, two reasons. It was small and out of the way. Why am I going to drive from Dover and Wilmington to Woodstock when I can just go to Killington and then not have to pay either? American Skiing Company, for those who are keeping, track. Dude, you're right. The internet is a wonderful thing, and you do find places. Like I knew about the places I knew because either I A, worked for the company, or B, was just driving around and happened to find it. But even today, like I used to volunteer at a Methodist camp, summer camp that's right around the bend from one of the ski areas that's on the Indy Pass in upstate New York, up north of Rome and Utica.
Titus?
No, that one's up in Malone, up by Lake Placid.
So Snow Ridge or West, those are all the ones that are...
Yeah, Snow Ridge is the one it is. And I cannot remember. Dude, I can't remember anything. I was talking to Doug Fish, and I was like, can you name them all? He's like, God, no. I'm like, neither can I, so don't even worry about it. It's rough. But, yeah, I had no idea that was there. I went there and volunteered for 4 years. It was around the corner, no clue. Indy Pass comes along. Now I know the internet's here. You're right. It's a beautiful thing. And you said you go to the smaller places, too. You have Indy as well, I assume. I think that's what you said, right?
Yeah, I do. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you enjoy those places too for the same reason we all do. Get away from all the big mountain stuff, right?
Yeah. I just am by nature drawn to variety and novelty, and I really just like seeing. There's a lot of reasons I like the smaller ski areas. Number one, I like the time machine aspect of it. I like riding these old lifts. Yep. I like feeling like I'm riding something that someone did 50 years ago, and sort of having substantively the same experience. I find that I'm really an off-piste skier, and the smaller places don't have the budget to groom as much, which I like because it creates all kinds of weird little trails all over the place.
Oh yeah, man.
That might, little shots through the woods or little bump areas or little impromptu jumps that I really like to explore and play around on. They're obviously cheaper. Usually you can park right at the base of the lifts. Mm-hmm. They have a certain kind of character. I hate it when people say the large ski areas don't, because they also have a lot of character and a lot of personality. But as a writer, how interesting would I be if I only went to the same 15 ski areas and only wrote about the same 15 ski areas that everyone else in the Northeast writes about? If all I did was base my whole thing around Sugarbush, Stowe, Waterville Valley, Cannon, Whiteface, yeah, I'm going to talk about those places.
Sure.
But there are, I just counted this up today. there are 170 ski areas between Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and the 6 New England states, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where I started the Storm, was in New England, or in the Northeast. I focused on that for 2 years, then I expanded nationally last year. But if I would have started only writing about the 15 biggest ski areas, I would have flamed out pretty quick, I think, because it's a little bit like what I was talking about earlier with the media only focusing on the flippity-doo guys, the bros who can do all the tricks.
Sure.
It's a little one note. It runs out. That fuse burns out pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And I think that if I'm really going to have something to say and really be able to properly contextualize the world of lift surf skiing the way that I want to and give a true global point of view on it, then I need to go out and experience and write about these places mm-hmm. and help other people, inspire other people to want to go experience these places. And, that makes it a true lifetime project, because if I wanted to keep writing about the same places, I would run out of stories really fast. But mm-hmm. now I will never. People keep asking me, what are you going to do when you run out of general manager to interview? I said, I'll never run out. I've only been doing this for 3 years. I've already had to redo Loon because I got a new general manager.
Totally.
Sugar Bush, I got a new general manager.
Totally.
Sunday River, because I got a new general manager. There's 473 skiers in the U.S. I'm going to expand to Canada next year. That's another couple hundred. Then there will be turnover. I will never, ever, this is a lifetime project. I will never, ever, ever run out of people to stop interviewing. I'll never run out of ski areas to go to. I think there's something like 6,000 ski areas in the world. I'm not going to visit them all. I'm just not.
Yeah, no way.
Even if I tried, but there will always be something new. There will always be something novel. There will always be something that will interest me. And I think if it's interesting to me, it will probably be interesting to other people who love skiing as well.
No, and you're 100% right. I actually think that's part of what killed publications like Powder Mag and things like this, is that you were just talking about these 3 or 4 in Colorado, those 2 in Utah, Killington and Sunday River over here, and you'd throw a bone to like Arizona or New Mexico, something. You pick one of the big ones out of there, and that's what you get. And you see it in a lot of these, like, I was reading again, I don't know why I look at it every single year. I think it's the Boston Globe does the best ski areas. And it's like that's subjective, so you can't say the best. And B, it's always the same 10 or 15 or whatever they do, because those are the biggest and most well known. Again, the marketing point. Cause for example, I was just talking to somebody. I was like, when people ask me how to avoid Stowe's traffic, I say, take a left off the exit and go to Bolton. That's it, dude. And they're like, what's Bolton? I'm like, and there's the issue. So yeah. I agree with you, man. Go to the smaller places. You'll never get them all. I can't wait till you go to Canada. I want to go to Canada. Mont Tremblant, they have a casino with a lift. There's nothing better than that in this world. I love casinos. I love Atlantic City, lived in Las Vegas. I love it all. So I also am going to expand into Canada next season.
Nice.
But it's just really to go gamble and ski at the same time. That's for me, kids. Sure, I'll do something on here about it, but that's for me. But since we're talking small, Stuart was up at the McIntyre, and shout out to McIntyre if you've never been there. It's a cool little place. It's literally a ski mountain. Well, mountain. It's only got like 200 vertical, I think, about ish, and it's in the middle of a neighborhood. Like it's the truest ski on, ski off you could possibly have. Because it's not at your condo, it's at your house. It's at your school. It's at the VA facility that's literally up the hill, a hospital. It's a wonderful, cool little place. Did you ever ski there, or did you just visit that time?
I skied there. Yeah, cool. It's a ski area, right? Yeah. It's small. It's a lot actually like the ski areas I used to ski in the Midwest. Totally. In Michigan, there's just not a lot of vertical there, and I can have a lot of fun on 200 vertical feet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I went there just for a morning and was like, dude, this is cool. Mostly for me, it was, man, if I was to ever move to Manchester, New Hampshire, which will probably never happen, but this is the neighborhood I want to live in because it's different. Like, it's right there. But anyway, my friend, my partner in crime up here, John Hunt, whom Stuart talked to, I forgot, man, you got him on your program like on his 31st day on the job, dude. That's awesome. I talked to him like a month and a half later, I think, but you got him early. And to see, what was it like hanging out with him? All right, so quick story. Stuart asked me, what do you think we're going to talk about on Monday? And John's like, talk about whaleback. And I'm like, oh, do that anyway. What is it like to see someone like, because you say you're never going to run out of GMs, executives. You're never going to run out. John's brand new, and he's already done a ton with a small place. What do you think about being able to see that progression in his job, his work, and that mountain?
I love it. I think that Whaleback is doing a smaller version of what Magic is doing with a smaller ski area that serves a very different purpose, right? Whaleback's story is different than Magic's story. Magic's story is it's this rowdy little anti-corporate spot with great terrain and a great vibe. Yeah. Whaleback's story is it's super easy to get to. It's cheap. It's got some nice terrain. It's right off the highway, and you're not going to be waiting in lift lines when you're there. Nope. And what John has been able to do is kind of take that raw material and shape it into the beginnings of, they're not as far along as Magic. He's only been on the job for a year and a half, but the beginnings of a sustainable operation. And that's all Whaleback needs to be. I mean, the fundamental difference here is Magic is a for-profit business. But Whaleback, and I was actually just writing about this today, the best decision they ever made was to turn that into a nonprofit ski area in 2013, because Whaleback's another one of these like Granite Gorge. No one's ever been able to figure it out. Yep. And they either tried to make it into Canon Junior, or they tried to make it too, like they adjusted too much the other way, like tried to make it this kind of bland thing. I think John has embraced the fact that, this is a nice little ski area with some nice glades. It has some good terrain, but this is what it is. It's a place where you can get a $200 season pass. You can ski at night. You can pop off right off I-89, excuse me, New Englanders, and make ski for an hour when it's dumping or when it's not, and go home and not really miss anything. So I think that as long as they don't try to make it what it isn't, and John continues to embrace what it is, and he gets buy-in from the board to embrace what it is, I think that it will be very successful. I think that what could really send Whaleback up a level is if it was able to get full IndyPass membership. It did join the IndyPass Allied program, which gives IndyPass holders half off on weekdays, 25% off on weekends and holidays. I don't know how much of a draw that's going to be, because IndyPass holders already have 2 days at Cannon and 2 days at Waterville and 2 days at Black and 2 days at Jay and 2 days at Magic and 2 days at Bolton Valley, and you're probably going to go through all those days before you're going to pay more money to ski somewhere else, especially a place that's smaller than every resort I just mentioned. So, I think it might be cool for Whaleback pass holders to be able to add that on, but I don't know how appealing the Allied program is going to end up being for resorts that can't be a part of it. I'm really curious to see how this No Boundaries pass works out, which is $99, and you get 3 tickets each at Whaleback, Dartmouth Skiway, and Mount Abram. And you can either use 1 ticket for a weekday, 2 tickets for a non-holiday Sunday, or 3 tickets for a Saturday or holiday. So you could ski up to 9 days or as few as 3, depending on how you work it. And you get 3 tickets for each ski area. Now, if Whaleback can't go full Indy and No Boundaries ends up being successful and expands, that might be a better option for them. I don't know how much appeal that pass is going to have and I just wrote about this in a newsletter I sent out right before we talked.
Sure.
I don't know how much appeal that pass is going to have, just because if you look around the Northeast, you can get a Northeast Epic Pass for less than $500. Well, you can't anymore, but you could if you were an early bird. The Epic Pass is off sale.
Sure.
The Icon Pass has some amazing mountains on it. The Indy Pass is, it started at $279, and you get 14 resorts in New England and then 7 next door in New York. It's going to be a tough sell, but I think Whaleback will succeed regardless, as long as they stay on that course. But I think IndyPass membership could give them a big, big boost, because then a lot of people would say, oh, this is super easy. Why not use it? I know it's been good to the point of maybe overloading Berkshire East and Catamount. And Berkshire East for years was a place that just nobody knew about.
Totally.
Because, yeah, it even though it has great terrain and great operators and a great vibe, it was just sort of lost, right? People who were either driving that far north were just keeping on going to Vermont. They weren't thinking to stop in Massachusetts. If they were going to Jiminy Peak with the high-speed six-pack. So Indy has that potential. It started to have that potential as a real launch pad for ski areas. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Allied program will be great. I'm a little skeptical of it. I don't think it's that great of a benefit for skiers or ski areas yet. We'll see.
Again, I have to agree. I don't know how it's going to turn out. And again, you're right. As someone who's traveling around, like for me, the Allied thing is something I'm going to use. Obviously not at Whaleback because I have a Whaleback pass. Like that's what I have. Yeah. $200. He's not wrong. Believe me, I'll abuse that one too. I'll be down to like $1 a day at that place. But
200-day season at Whaleback. I'd like to see that.
I mean, if you had the grass, get some of
rollerblade
those grass skis,
right.
I would never do that. I'm not that good a skier as it is. But kidding aside, yeah, like for me, again, I can shoot over to the Middlebury Snow Bowl, and that'll be $20 on a weekday, I think, if I remember correctly, which is banging. Who else is on Allied? The Skiway is on Allied, and no matter how
Kingpine and McIntyre.
Yeah, and McIntyre.
And Burke's a good one. Burke's the best one.
Burke is a great one. That was a shocker. Didn't see that coming. Again, the Skiway, and again, because I have a Whaleback pass, I could go there for half price anyway. It doesn't matter to me. But you're right. It's an odd thing. But Doug Fish seems to have faith in it, and he's hit on all cylinders so far. So we'll see how it turns out. Would Whaleback benefit from full Indy? Again, I don't know, because it really is. You're not wrong when you made the comparison between Whaleback and Magic. Whaleback is a community hill, and if you think I'm wrong, trust me. The company Hypertherm over here in Lebanon, any day it's snowing, check your punches, because people are out of there, and they might not have punched out. They might have snuck out. I seen it. I was over there on a power day one day. I've never seen so many cars at that place. I was like,
love it.
It was like 2:30 in the afternoon. I was like, oh yeah, everybody here's playing hooky, except for the kids. Of course, the schools knew they were there, but everybody else is breaking out. Yeah, so Hypertherm, DMCH, all of you there, or DHMC. I mean, just check your punches. It's fine. But it is a great place. I talk it up. I tell people all the time, I don't like talking it up because I don't want it to not become more, but I like having it to myself on a Tuesday at 2:00, first chair, but I also want to see it succeed. So go check it out, everybody, if you haven't. Stuart, have you been up there and skied it? I don't remember.
I've not skied it. No, I have to ski it this year.
That'll be cool. You come up, you let me know. I'll go over there. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy the double chair. John will come out. I catch him, walking through. I'm like, dude, you got 10 minutes? And he's like, yeah. And we go up and we come down, man. Shout out to Alex too. I've skied with Alex a bunch. In fact, I was getting to know them so well. One of their lifties, he's not going to be a lifty this year. He's moving to Colorado. He ran into me at Killington during the Killington Cup, the heroic Killington Cup. And he recognized me before I recognized him. I was like, oh, dude. All right.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I love that community.
It's a community place. It's a friendly place. And it is fun. And some of the terrain is no joke. It's made me breathe heavy. Like, I'm not going to say I'm a CrossFit athlete anyway. I'm not in great shape. But it'll test you. It'll test you. And it's a wonderful place. And I love it. And I think you'll love it, too. But there, John, did we talk about it enough? You can let me know later in the week if you want to. But we're going to go on to some other things here. One of the things I saw, and this was something that was interesting to me, and I do want to talk to Snowbound, because I haven't been able to really talk to anybody else who was working there. I've talked to people who went there, but not really working there. But at Snowbound in particular, I stopped to talk to the ladies, Hannah, and I'm sorry to the other one. I can't remember your name. But we were talking about Big Snow American Dream. Because I love Big Snow. I've only been there once, but I love it. The ridiculousness of riding a quad chair in a giant freezer, it's amazing, and I love it. But we talked about the haters, because people hate on that place all the time. And I was like, nobody gave you hate to your face, did they? And she's like, yeah, actually, a couple of them did. I was like, well, awesome. Go Jersey. Rock on. Whatever. But this is all going to a tweet I saw. You put it up sometime today, and now I just lost it because the dang app just did what it shouldn't have, and reset itself. But anyway, you were talking about Epic Passes being, I can't read it now word for word, Epic Passes being sold out, and you made a remark about insert the people who think they know what they're talking about telling you the business model, even though you've written about it a billion times. And Out of Bounds replied to it something like how they enjoy when you're mean to trolls. I assume that was Jabber, because I think he's the one who plays with Twitter most over there. Do you deal with the haters well? Not at all. Like, I don't like them, and I've had to have people talk me down from doing some real damage. Like, how do you handle it?
I have evolved over time. I don't know that I've always handled it well, or that I do always handle it well. I think that, the frustrating thing about social media is that people, for whatever reason, because of the way the interface is built or the anonymity of it, they feel the license to talk to people in a way that they just wouldn't in real life.
Yeah.
In a very condescending way of speaking, in a very mean-spirited way, and this sort of assumption of bad intent. I used to occasionally engage with people and get angry, and I had a particularly bad exchange about a year ago, and just decided that I wasn't going to argue on Twitter anymore. And I just was not going to let people hook me into battle on the open internet. I will respond to most emails and direct messages.
Mm-hmm.
If the person comes at me in an aggressive way or a particularly vile way, I will typically either ignore it or just block them.
Sure.
I've gotten pretty liberal with that. And I really mostly stopped even checking comments on posts I make. I kind of think of it as broadcasting, right?
Okay.
Where I'm just putting information out there.
Cool.
Because
like
I found that too often it was putting me in a place I didn't want to be. A bad headspace. It was creating bad energy. It was distracting me from all the things I need to do in my life. It distracting me from the storm, distracting me from my kids, distracting me from my wife.
Yeah.
And this wasn't a good use of my energy. So I've never really been a scroller anyway.
Yeah.
But what I've really done is stopped checking the replies too often. I'll still look at them sometimes. So if I threw something out there like that, I was just acknowledging sort of one of the things that I found annoying about social media, which is what I said earlier, this assumption of bad intent, or it's only a 140 character tweet. I can't write War and Peace in this tweet.
Totally.
And sometimes I'm just trying to convey a bit of information, and some knucklehead wants to remind me of all the things that I didn't include or don't understand about this. And I'm like, I think you're reading too much into this, dude.
Yeah.
So
yep.
I appreciate Jabber. That's my guy. I wouldn't give him, he's probably giving me too much credit there. I wasn't trying to, that wasn't like my trump card or anything.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get ahead of what I saw would be some of the probably less well considered responses that I see as the incivility problem with social media. I know I'm not alone, and I also know that it's a silly thing to harp on, because that's just what social media is and what it will be until the day I die. So that's not a mountain I'm going to try to conquer and plant my flag in necessarily, but I'll work my little digs in there at the mob wherever I feel it's appropriate.
I like that, man. That's probably a better way to handle it, because I find it intriguing, because social media can be a mess anyway. And then when you're trying to be an actual writer, I'm hesitant to use the words content creator, because you're trying hard, and I try hard, and we're trying to make something worth reading, worth listening to, worth seeing, whatever it is. And the haters come by, and now I have a mean streak, and I know it, and I have no problem effing wording and S-ing wording and A wording and whatever words you want to use, I'll use them. And again, got to be talked down sometimes, like, dude, just let it go. And I find it very interesting when people, you know, who are in the public eye, not saying either of us are Brad Pitt, but, you know, we entertain people in a way, and we inform people, and people like to take out whatever frustration, anger out on us. You don't fire it back. I will. That's bad. I was just curious. Let
me say, you know, I think it's, first of all, it's hard to put yourself out there.
Sure.
And I think until you're doing it, and because every podcast I put out, I mean, I put between 15 and 20 hours into it, between prep and edit and recording and writing the article that goes along with it. Most of my articles that aren't podcast based take at least 10 hours. And when you take that, and that, you know, if time is money, then time is also sort of creating something of personal value, and you put out there, and it's kind of out there, and people can do whatever they want with it. And it can be tough to take that. A piece of advice that I got, and I don't remember, I wish I could credit the source on this, because I don't remember if I heard it in journalism school. I don't think it was, because social media wasn't big when I went to journalism school, but
sure.
But it was punch up, not down, right? So yes, will I criticize? Who did I criticize today? It was some big mountain, right? Or take, you know, Vail Resorts does something and you critique it. Or I'll give you an example. Like last year when Powder Corps rolled out their fast lanes for Killington, Snowbird, Copper, and Bachelor, I had a pretty harsh assessment of that, right? But Powder Corps can take it, right? They're a big company, and they just did something that affects a lot of people, and a lot of people who bought season passes for over $1,000 to their mountains. Yeah. So they're a public entity, and they're out there. Now, if some, you know, two follower Twitter troll wants to come after me, like this one dude kept doing over my take on Vail Resorts having an employee housing project that they were ready to invest $20 million into, or I think it was $14 million into, on land that they owned, and the town of Vail shut it down, and this troll kept harassing me about it. There's no reason for me to go after that guy.
True.
And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but I am saying that this is a person that is trying to get attention, that is practically begging for it, and is hoping to leverage, I hate that word, is hoping to use the several thousand followers that I built to amplify his message. And I'm just not going to give him that satisfaction. And eventually I blocked him because he was just getting too annoying. And now here I am talking about him on this podcast, so I guess he got what he wanted. But I'm not saying his name, so I guess that's good enough. And I think that has helped guide me, right? I think that what I'm as a ski industry pundit and someone who has an opinion, and I think that Killington or Vail Resorts or Alterra Mountain Company is equipped to absorb that criticism and perhaps use it in a meaningful way. Whereas if I try to attack or get defensive about just some random hitting me on social media, it makes me look petty. It makes me look bad. It makes me look unserious. It makes me look like someone who, frankly, maybe shouldn't be trusted with, this platform I built where ski industry executives trust that they can come on my podcast, and I will treat that in a respectful way that it deserves.
Sure.
Because their time is a very valuable thing. So, I want to sort of keep that perception. Now, sometimes it's a little weird. I think sometimes my newsletter gets salty, and I'll throw some F-bombs in there, and it gets a little wily, but that's sort of part of the entertainment piece of it. And I'm not picking on, random Twitter troll number 52.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, look, dropping a few swear words, we got to have some fun too. How many of y'all listen to Mario and Brian over there? Those guys are great. They're almost all about the fun. Again, different. And I have a lot of fun with those guys too. And I was actually telling them at Snowbound, I was like, my mouth gets filthier when I'm recording. I don't care about swearing in my daily life. I do it constantly. But here I've been trying a little bit, kind of, whatever. But, I do
a clean podcast. I think for listeners, it's appealing. I think a lot of people have told me they listen with their kids. So yeah. I keep the podcast clean as a general thing.
Yeah. Well, and I try to as well. And again, it depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm over there on Highfalutin or they're on here, it gets a little racy with the language. Jabber was on here. It got a little racy with the language, and I love Adam. He's a great guy. It sucked, man. I ran out of time. I talked to Adam X, but not Adam Jabber when I was down in Snowbound. I was a little upset because that was the first time I met both those guys in person. So, and Stuart as well. And it was a lot of fun, Snowbound, don't you think?
Yeah. I was in and out. I took my train up from New York in the morning. I got there around lunchtime, and I left around dinner time. But it was good energy. I thought Mario and Brian did a great job hosting the main stage. Steve Wright, general manager of JP, joined me on the stage. Yep. He was very gracious because he'd just been on the podcast not that long ago. It was nice to meet you in person. I met a bunch of other folks. The energy I thought was really good. The space was very appealing. They did a nice job. I'm not really a convention goer sort, but as far as listings go, it was cool. I was also glad to get out of there.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, and I get it. Like, for me, I don't know. I'm like you in a way where I'm drawn to the crowd-ish. Yeah. Similar to you, but it's a little different. So I like being in there. I like the social aspect. That's something I try to talk about here on Ski Rex Media. Skiing is a social sport, even if you're doing it by yourself, because you're sitting on a lift. You're going to probably talk to that person or those people. And you get some great stories. I was at Pat's Peak. I'm talking to a guy, his daughter sitting between us, and it was just a look on her face of two older guys just yapping about skiing around. She was just bored with it. It's great. That's part of the fun. So I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. I was only there for Friday myself, and I had to go back to South Station as well to take a bus, not a train. Definitely the best way to go to Boston next year if you're going. It has been announced for November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. At a different convention center, but don't drive into Boston. You will thank me later. You think we were talking about New York traffic? Forget it. Boston's worse. Just saying. Anyway, I was a lot of fun. I liked it. I think they did a great job. I actually had a better time that year than the last one in 2019. That was the first time I'd ever gone. I think this was better. Personally, maybe other people disagree. I don't know. They had all kinds of stuff going there. A lot of fun. Mario and Brian. You got the Steve Wright interview on stage. How was that for you? You don't usually work live, do you?
No, that was the only one I've ever done live.
There you go. How'd you feel?
I've always done them online.
Huh?
Oh, thank you very much. It was fun. I think Steve is easy to interview. He's very personable. He has a lot to say. He's a very smart guy. Mm-hmm. He's done just a phenomenal job leading JP through it. I think that I would like to do it more. I honestly just don't. Like I said, my wife edits the podcast. I don't have that technical ability or really patience to figure it out. I would like to eventually do more of those. Snowbound did all the tech for that one.
Sure, yeah.
And so I didn't have to figure that out. And obviously there's a way to do it. Jabber does most of his live, and a lot of other folks do as well. I think that, again, getting back to the fact that I'm in New York, there pretty much everyone comes through here at some point, but there are no ski areas here, and unless I want to just do this, when I go to a ski area, I want to go skiing. Yeah, totally. I don't want to sit in someone's office.
Yeah, 100.
So, I would rather do it, on a Monday night when I can't possibly be skiing anywhere, than waste time when there's a lift spinning outside doing the podcast. So I think I'll probably do it again at some point. I'm not super driven to organize it myself. If someone asked me to, I would certainly be open to that.
Oh, cool. That was going to be my next question. Come next year, as Raccoon events start sending out emails and stuff, if they say, hey, Stuart, you want to come do it again? You want to do 2 this time, or whatever they would possibly offer? Would you do it? And clearly you would.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how my schedule goes. My number one priority in the fall is Michigan football.
Okay.
I have season tickets, and it's the only sport I follow. There's only 12 games a year. Mm-hmm. those 12 games are my super duper extra big priority.
Nice.
So if there's a Michigan home game that I want to go to that weekend, I'm not going to Snowbound. I'll be in Michigan. So you gotta have some balance in your life.
No, that's awesome, and 100% get it. I would definitely throw some other things to the wayside to do other things. Absolutely, 100%. And that's awesome. No, it is a lot of fun. I definitely want to go again. I'd like to go to England to see that one, or those two, but probably one or the other, just because it seems as I get to talk to more UK skiers, the cultural difference is between UK skiers and American skiers. Like, I know that sounds like a generalization of some kind of almost stereotypes, but that's not what I mean at all. It's just a different way of life and doing it, which is totally fine. I don't know if do you get to run into a lot of UK riders and skiers?
Not in the Northeast. When you go out west, there's a lot more. You know, the folks I know from the UK, they grew up skiing in France.
Totally.
And that's a very different thing from skiing in the States. It's a lot of above tree line. It's a lot of skiing village to village. It's a lot more of a cultural element. It's a lot more of a food element to it. It's just I don't want to say it's a different sport, but it's a very, very, very different vibe. I've skied in Europe a couple times. And they, like a UK skier would typically enter the US skiing having skied Europe first.
Sure.
Like the Alps. And so they just have a different set of expectations of what skiing is, for better or worse. And so, yeah, I would say they generally do have that little bit different mindset. And I think it comes from where they naturally grow up skiing, which in most cases is going to be France, because it's such an easy flight for them.
Oh,
from
yeah,
the UK.
Absolutely. I just think it's interesting. I mean, that's my big thing with traveling anyway, is that social element to learn. How do you all do it? How do you all do it? How does this person do it? How does that person do it? The difference between indoor and outdoor skiing, and big mountains and small mountains and backcountry. Like, you know, I can't even imagine backcountry. A lot of that's high elevation, and I don't do that because I'm not good. It just gets disgusting and ugly. But it's a whole thing, and I just find it interesting. And again, it comes back around to you being a road tripper around the States. I mean, we have so many different things you can have here. Between New England ski culture is one thing, Rocky Mountain ski culture is one thing, PNW ski culture. And it's not that we're doing a different sport, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. Absolutely not. I wouldn't do that. I don't stereotype or nothing. And I don't do that gatekeeping thing. You know what? A little side, since it just popped into my head and I said this. Do you think people are starting to talk about how do we get more people to go skiing? And one of the things, I say two things. I say, one, honestly, in America, nobody really likes to do it. And like, we like to do it, but generally speaking, and I don't like to generalize, I hate it, but people don't like to do it. And number two, I think one of the reasons they don't do it is because of the gatekeeping. Like, you're not really a skier if you're not doing this, or you're not really a skier if you're not doing that. Again, this one's just for me, kids. I'm sorry. It just popped into my head. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my brand is built on that, and that's why I'm pretty out front with saying I live in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. I've never lived in a mountain town. I've never worked in the ski industry, and I'm a tourist everywhere I go.
Sure.
But I'm a skier. I love skiing. I've skied at more ski areas than probably 99% of skiers. And no one can tell me that I'm not a skier because I don't live in Telluride. Mm-hmm. Or, don't necessarily subscribe to some of the same, like, there's this big kind of fetishization of like this dirtbag lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I'm a dad with kids and a mortgage and a minivan. Mm-hmm. And I'll own that all day. And I think that by doing that and creating a brand on that and aggressively saying, I'm coming in as a tourist and this is how I'm going to evaluate the experience, that is a lot more relatable than the person who lives in Aspen. Because there's a lot more of me than there are people who actually live in mountain towns and have that experience. I'm not discarding their experience. It is its own valuable thing that is part of the conversation and part of the narrative. But there's a lot less of folks talking about it from outside of that. So that's one piece of that. The second piece goes back to what you were saying earlier about big snow, and I had Joe Hession on this podcast, on my podcast, in June. It's a long conversation. It's about 2 hours, but if you want to hear someone who's thinking 25 steps ahead of everyone else, it's Joe Hession. And what they're going to do is replicate big snow like it's Taco Bell, and they're going to build one in every city where it makes sense. And Alpine X is doing the same thing. And totally. I believe you've had John Emery on the podcast, right?
You know it, baby.
yeah, he's been on mine as well. And between those two, I think a lot of the reason why, if you look at France or Austria, they're a lot smaller population-wise, but they have a lot more skiers. But those aren't really very good comparisons, because if you look at the United States, the second most populous state is Texas, 0 ski areas. The third most populous state is Florida, 0 ski areas. And if you look at large parts of California, it's harder to get to skiing there as well. There's tens of millions, perhaps over 100 million people in the United States who just don't live within driving distance of a ski area. And if that's the case, you're probably not going to grow up skiing. Now, drop a big snow in Miami and Houston and Dallas and Tampa, and suddenly every single kid growing up in those cities goes there as part of a school trip or an after-school program. And they're a skier just as much as you or I, who grew up in the Midwest and the Northeast, are skiers. And what do skiers do? They look to the horizon and they say, oh, well, this is fun. Like, I kind of want to, like, say you're in Texas. Sure. Well, Taos is only, a 10-hour drive or whatever it is. Let me go there. And then you really get to fall in love with it. So I think there's those two elements. I think one is not to pat my own back, but just saying more ski media by people who are not priding themselves on living in a pickup truck. And number two is just more people being able to ski as a matter of course.
Absolutely. And that's why I fully support the indoor thing. I do know pre-COVID, but before 555 was having trouble. They own the American Dream Mall and the other big malls, Mall of America, the Edmonton Mall. One of their projects for American Dream Miami was going to have another indoor thing, and again, they started having financial troubles just like everybody else did. But they could do it. John Emery, I think he said, part of his model is to be a feeder. Get them in the door and then get them the hell back out the door so they can go everywhere else. And it's going to turn it around, and it's going to kill, I hope, some of that hater gatekeeping stereotype kind of stuff that I fight against constantly. I'm like, dude, like my favorite people are like, oh, skier is rich man's sport. I'm like, dude, I'm not rich. I'm not rich. Is it expensive? Yes. Do I know how to get around it? Yeah, I do. Like there's tons of ways, and let me educate you the best that I can. That one of the reasons I went to the Hermitage Club was to dispel rich person stereotype. Yes, it's private. Yes, it costs a lot of money, but if you're anything like me, you would absolutely pay it if you had it, because, oh my goodness, is that place awesome. I mean, I love skiing at Haystack anyway, but the Hermitage Club part with the spas and the food and the amenities, oh, it's wonderful. Let me tell you something. You get out of your car and they practically carry you in on a throne. It's wonderful. So yeah, I just wanted to get someone else's opinion, someone who's in it even deeper than I am. Like, again, I'm a travel skier too. And, I try to talk to everybody, but you've been doing that even more so, because I do other things too. And you're a bit more pinpoint than I am, a bit more precision. Like, he's the sniper. I'm just carpet bombing everything. That's what that is, and, not better or worse. Just we do it differently. And I just wanted, because we live in a time where everybody's talking inclusivity. And I was just like, here's my take on it, and I wanted yours. So There you go, everybody. Again, another learning experience brought to you by Ski Rex Media, because Tim's too damn nosy. All right, man. Well, we're at an hour and 20. What else we got? What else you want to throw out there? Anything? Nothing? You want to drop a few F-bombs here? We can do whatever we want, man. That's the beauty of me.
No, I don't. I'm just, I broke my leg in February, so I've been out now 3 days.
Totally.
And I'm just excited to be back and really pumped up for a full ski season and, pumped up to see all these new brands, because the great thing about being in, living in 2022 and the sort of better side of all the negativity we've talked about earlier with the, some of the bad parts of social media is that you and I were able to start brands with, basically zero startup cost.
Totally.
I mean, I see you have a nice mic. I have one too, but that sort of thing is nominal in comparison to what you would have had to have even 15 years ago.
Yep.
To start a media company. And it's just one person who's willing to give their time is able to do it. So it's really fun to see brands like yours emerging, and I'm really pumped up I got to be part of it. So thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it, Tim.
Oh, thank you, dude. I've been ready for this. I'm still kind of, I'm not shy, but hesitant about a lot of things, so I still have people I'm still looking for and trying to get a hold of. And, if you have any leads on Les Otten, pass them my way, because I've lost track of all of their people. I don't know if the Balsams imploded on those people, but I love Les Otten. I shook his hand when I was 18 or 19. I'd love to talk to him again. He just disappeared. So,
Yeah, I've been trying to get him on my pod since day one with less success even than that. So I'm not much help there, man. But if I figure out a hack, I will certainly let you know.
That's what I like to hear. That's right. I'm name dropping now. I've got Stuart Winchester on the pod. I've met Les Otten. I haven't read Chris Diamond's books, but I've talked to the guy 100 times because I worked at Mount Snow at the same time as he did. Granted, nice. I was a high school kid in food and beverage, and he was up in the offices being whatever his title was. I don't remember. That's how long. See, here's the beauty of the differences between just any media outlet. Anyway, Stuart brought up Powder's Fast Pass thing, whatever it was called. Not only could he remember what it was called, he rattled off all 4 mountains like he just looked at it without looking at it. He was looking at me. I couldn't have remembered that. I even forgot Killington was part of that nonsense. And I did say it was nonsense openly at the same time. I'm like, dude, you're just asking for it. You're just asking for the haters. Like, why would you do that to yourself? I don't know. But anyway, thank you, Stuart, for being on the program. I do appreciate it. I love I love Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. It's a lot of fun. Check that out at stormskiing.com. That's right?
Correct.
See, look at that. All right, so I'm not completely gone. Good. So check out Stuart. You can sign up for the newsletter. He's got all kinds of stuff going on, tons of different resources that center. We didn't even talk about like some of the resources you have on your website that center around the different multi-passes. Like if you need it laid out for you, this man has it done. Now, how did you come up with that real quick before we get out of here?
Oh, yeah. So I started to notice that there was a lot of season passes that were sort of de facto acting as multi-mountain passes because they had all these reciprocal agreements.
Sure.
And they weren't really all together in one place. And some of them were really inexpensive. And I felt like people just didn't understand what was out there. Mountain Creek, to go back to an example I use a lot, they don't have any reciprocal deals, but their season pass, this was a couple years ago, was only $199, right, for the blackout version.
Sure.
And Mountain Creek has a bad reputation because it can get super crowded. But I was like, well, that's true. Mm-hmm. And there is a crazy demographic of skiers there, a lot of novices. And the terrain is pretty kind of steep for beginners. But it's 1,000 vertical feet. It has all high-speed lifts. It's super close to my house. And if I could get there at 8 in the morning when the lift's open, ski my butt off for 2.5, 3 hours, on a day when I can't spare a whole day to go up to Gore Mountain, it's perfect because I can be home for lunchtime and hang out with my family who aren't quite as avid of skiers as I am.
Sure.
So it's like, well, there's a lot of deals out there like this where you can have a local plus an Icon Pass or plus an Indy Pass. Ragged Mountain, for example, for a long time, they have their Mission Affordable Pass that was as low as $299 in recent years. Now it's up to $379 early bird. But anyway, there were a lot of little passes like this that people I thought weren't thinking of. So I thought, all right, let me just lay them all out. The price, where else you get tickets, at that mountain, what reciprocal deals they have. And just for my own reference, just so I know what I'm talking about, again, I want to create that global context.
Sure.
And if I'm only writing about pretty much every past comparison article you'll see, compares Epic and Icon, sometimes they'll throw in Indie, once in a while Mountain Collective. But they're not intruder here. But they're not doing it in the context of what the local skier can get. Mm-hmm. Because in a lot of cases, I would have, I always have my Mountain Creek pass for my quick hits.
Sure.
And then I have, a bigger pass for out west trips, New England trips, everything else. So, that looks a little different now that I'm using more media passes and stuff. But
sure.
But I want to help other people set up their winter to ski the most days possible, mm-hmm. on the least amount of money possible. Getting back to that thing you said about it not being a rich man's sport. Totally. If you just plan it a little bit and think ahead a little bit, you can really get a lot of days in and kind of live that ski bum life without having to live in Park City or wherever.
Absolutely. And that's what it really comes down to, is getting it done. And Stuart on his website, stormskiing.com, has it all laid out for you. If you live that spreadsheet life, you'll probably appreciate it, and it's wonderful. And again, you can't remember it all. Some people may be able to. I can't. I think there's a lot more people like me who can't remember it all, and there it is. Like, I know what's on the Indy-ish, and I know what's on the Freedom Pass-ish, because it's part of my whaleback. That's mm-hmm. it. Stuart's got it all laid out for you. Stormskiing.com. Sign up over there. Listen. The podcast is available everywhere, pretty much, I'm sure. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the major services.
There you go.
But but go to stormskiing.com, because the article that I create that goes along with the podcast has a ton of extra context and trail maps and master plans. And if you sign up for the email newsletter there,
sure,
you'll get the podcast as soon as they're live. It takes 2 or 3 hours for them to sync with Spotify and iTunes.
Totally.
But they're on the newsletter right away.
Okay.
You can listen to them. You can stream them right there on the app.
There you go, kids. Makes it nice and easy for you. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. Thank you, Stuart. Shout out to your little boy in the background there. I see him waving and stuff.
That's Logan.
All right. I know nobody's going to see the video of this, but he's waving, so we're waving back, and that's awesome. All right, man. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I hope to see you soon. Again, if you come up to Whaleback or anywhere within spitting distance, let me know. I'll go out.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to wait up. Not the greatest, but I try.
Like I said, I'm recovering from a broken leg, so I'm slow stew right now.
That's awesome. I've never been so happy that someone got hurt before in my life. Great, awesome. Thank you, dude. I will check you later, and we'll see everybody else out there.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Tim.
And there he goes, everybody. Stuart Winchester, Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. Stuart's pretty cool, man. I like talking to him. I thought it was awesome that I got to meet him. I've checked out his website and podcast more than once. Awesome guy, knows what he's talking about, and has the different angle that, from what I have, though similar in many ways. So that's very cool. Again, thank you to Stuart, and go ahead and check out his website, his podcast, stormskiing.com, and that'll get you to the website, the newsletter, the podcast. Like he was saying, if you get the newsletter, you get the podcast much quicker, just right on the money as soon as they come out. So definitely check out Stuart Winchester and stormskiing.com for the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. Check out all of that, then check out Ski Rex Media while you're at it, skirexmedia.com, which may or may not be changing yet again during this season. That'll be coming up shortly, but hey, at least when I'm done with that, the merch shop should be back up and running. How about that? You can get Ski Rex Media merch, right? Awesome. No? Yes? Maybe? I don't know. skirexmedia.com or Skirex Media across social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even LinkedIn if you're into it. Check out all of those things. Check out the Skirex Media podcast, which you already have. Share it with your friends. Rate it where you can, Apple Podcasts, and there's a couple others that do it. I can't remember offhand. Share it with your friends, like I said. I know I'm repeating myself. Subscribe or follow. I'm still repeating myself. Subscribe, follow everywhere. Share it with your friends. Rate it where you can. All that good stuff. You know the drill. I thank you. Coming next week is another brand new podcast. Be ready for it next Wednesday if you're listening on Wednesday. If not, it's always on Wednesday. Every Wednesday, 9 a.m. is when it first debuts on all of your favorite podcasting apps, specifically the Podbean app. Check out Podbean, podbean.com, the Podbean app. That's my host. it's very easy to find the Ski Rex Media podcast there, but you can find it pretty much anywhere else, including audio-only version on YouTube, which is a whole other thing. Like, maybe you like just seeing a waveform, so you can do that. Or if you just use YouTube, you know, and you can use it in the background, that's fine too. You can find Ski Rex Media podcast anywhere. Head to skirexmedia.com for everything else, including the podcast, actually, now that I think about it. And I think that's everything. We'll talk to you next week, and we'll see you out there. My day one's coming, I hope. Let's all hope, right? Right. See you out there. Thank you, everybody. Later.